Welcome to this week's weekly investment update. My name is Chris Marshall. I'm Head of Investment Strategy here at Dragon Investment Managers, and it's Friday the 31st of July. So this week was always going to be a really busy week in the markets. We had a lot of information and announcements and earnings data come out. So yesterday, that was Thursday the 30th of July, of course, we saw four of the big tech names reporting their earnings. So we saw Apple and Facebook and Amazon and Alphabet. And of course, we've got to bear in mind just how much of the US market these four names really make up. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, we've also seen the Fed speech. So Jerome Powell came out with a speech. We have stuff going on with the US Congress. We saw GDP data for the US. And of course, we're still seeing insight into those initial jobless claims. So we're seeing an awful lot of news come out where it's not really too surprising that we're still seeing volatility in market with so much going on. And it's really been a case of looking through all the noise to see what the true signals are. So let's have a little think about some of the things going on. But first, let's just have a little recap of what markets have been doing. We've seen a lot of the Asian shares trade up over the week. They're probably up about 3% depending on which indices you look at. If you then come to the US, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So actually the bigger indices like the S&P 500, we're going into Friday's trading session with about a 1% gain for the week. And as you go through the market cap structure, so the mid caps are up a little bit more, about 1.4% as they come into Friday's trading session. And the small caps actually outperforming both of those with about a 2.4% gain for the week. As we come into UK and Europe, however, we're seeing a UK market come into Friday's trading session. It's still before hours at the moment, but we're coming into Friday's trading session with about 2% loss on the charts. And as we look at Europe as well, it's a very similar story, again, depending on which indice you look at. So what's been going on and what's been driving these markets? Well, we've seen implied volatility pick up, and that's really volatility being suggested in the future by the futures market. So that's something significant because it's saying that in the future there could be some more volatility, and often volatility is not a great thing for stock prices overall. So that's something just to keep watching, really. And this implied volatility is really speaking of, as I said a few seconds ago, about all the data coming out and some of the uncertainty that's surrounding markets and their prices and really the trajectory of the economy from here. So we saw Jerome Powell come out, so US Fed chair come out, and really it was a message more of the same. They're going to keep rates on hold, they're going to keep doing what they can, but underneath, reading between the lines, it was more they have no idea of what really the real economy is doing. It was a message of uncertainty, uncertainty, uncertainty. And this has been something which has really been the same throughout all the speeches since the pandemic started. They just come out and said, we'll ply the market with as much liquidity as we can, but we don't really have an idea of how the market is performing. So if we turn to some earnings, of course, yesterday was a very, very big earnings announcement day. We saw those four big tech names, Apple, Facebook, Amazon and Alphabet come out. And we've got to bear in mind that between them, they have a market cap of about $5 trillion. If we look and compare that back to the S&P 500, which of course all of those four companies sit in, then we find that actually the S&P 500 is only a market cap of 27 trillion. So they actually represent a huge amount. And the positive sentiment, which is going to come into today's trading session, hopefully from this, is going to come from they all reported very good earnings announcements, beating forecasts in many of the metrics. When we looked at Asia actually this morning, they aren't so much focused on those earnings, but more on the rising coronavirus cases. And of course, also that GDP figure that we saw released yesterday for the US, which was minus 32.9%, a huge reduction in GDP being reported. And Asian shares are really picking up on that negative sentiment of what that might mean for a very much more slower global economy, certainly in the near term. So these are the factors which are all coming into play. On top of that, we of course see that US Congress are discussing and really debating what the next stimulus package will look like. The original one that was put in place at the beginning of this pandemic was really only set up for a few months, and it's coming to an end with many of the things coming to an end today actually. And they still have not agreed what the next one looks like, but clearly with seeing initial jobless claims of 1.4 million people again this week, there is a very, very real need for them to agree that. Now, when the President Donald Trump comes out and he says we're very, very far apart, so this is between the parties, we're very far apart on agreeing something and we don't really care, this is clearly just another bluff. Clearly the Republicans, just as much as the Democrats, want something in place, especially as we're now heading into election season. But these things and these factors are going to have a massive impact on both the real economy as well as the market prices. And so we have an awful lot going on, but I think really the key takeaway is that you have to keep cutting through that noise and you have to keep watching what the price action is doing. So for us, we keep watching those charts, we keep watching what price momentum is suggesting, and really, as I said, cut through that noise. So for another week, that gives you hopefully a little bit of a snapshot as to some of the things going on, and will continue to actually go on throughout the next few weeks really, as the market keeps digesting what all this means. So from myself and all my team at Dragon Investment Managers, thank you very much for tuning in for another week, and we'll be back again next week with some more insights into the market.